South Korea imposes sanctions on 7 North Koreans and 2 Russian vessels over the regime's weapons trade with Russia that violates UN Security Council resolutions. South Korea will take turns to hold the UNSC presidency next month, with a host of issues on the agenda such as cybersecurity and North Korea. The nation's University Council confirmed today an increase in the medical school admissions quota for 2025, finalizing the first such expansion in nearly 3 decades. Some 1,500 additional places are expected to be added next year. It's May 24th, 2024. This is Newscenter. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. South Korea has imposed a new round of sanctions against North Korea over the regime's military cooperation with Russia and for raising funds to support Pyongyang's nuclear and missile development. Japan also made a similar announcement on the same day. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji has our top story.
South Korea has issued new sanctions against North Korea as part of its latest efforts to counter the regime's growing nuclear and missile threats. The sanctions were slapped on 7 North Korean individuals and 2 Russian vessels related to military cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow. Among them is Lee Myung-hyuk, a North Korean representing a state-controlled company based in Syria, who is suspected of being involved in the legal trade of weapons and arms equipment with Russia. Another, Han Hyuk-chul, the head of a company based in Vladivostok, was also put on the list for being involved in taking diesel into North Korea from Russia. 5 other individuals helped raise funds to support the North's nuclear missile programs by earning foreign currency as IT workers in Russia. The Russian vessels were placed under sanctions for allegedly transporting military supplies by carrying a large number of containers between Russia and North Korea. With the sanctions now in place, those wishing to engage in financial transactions with the individuals must obtain permission from the governor of the Bank of Korea or the Financial Services Commission. And the captain of the Russian ships must have domestic entry approval from the regulatory authority before entering South Korea. Announcing this on Friday, the Foreign Ministry said weapons trade between North Korea and Russia is a clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions, and stressed that South Korea and the international community have repeatedly called for an immediate end to their illegal military cooperation. Separately, Japan also announced sanctions on 11 organizations and 1 individual, including what it said were Russian groups linked to military cooperation to support the war in Ukraine. The country's chief cabinet secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi said in a press conference that this freezes the assets owned by the targeted organizations and individuals, and added that the transfer of North Korean weapons to Russia could further aggravate the situation in Ukraine. The sanctions come after Russia recently vetoed the extension of a mandate for the United Nations panel of experts that have been monitoring sanctions on North Korea, prompting South Korea, US, and other allies to seek alternatives. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
South Korea is poised to preside over the UN Security Council this June for the first time in a decade. And among many issues on its agenda are cybersecurity and North Korea. Lee Seung-jae tells us more.
For the first time in a decade, South Korea is set to hold the rotating presidency of the UN Security Council next month. South Korea, which is a non-permanent UNSC member, will chair the council for 1 month as the council's 15 member states rotate on a monthly basis. During a press meeting, Seoul's top envoy to the UN, Hwang Jun-guk, said undertaking the presidency is an important role in coordinating the UNSC agenda, adding that South Korea will be ready to convene a UNSC meeting in the event of a provocation by North Korea. Hwang emphasized that the role of the chairing country is important as it affects the direction of discussions on key global issues and international opinion. During its month-long presidency, South Korea will seek to hold high-level public discussions on the topic of cybersecurity. Seoul has been heavily focused on such issues due to evolving threats by Pyongyang in the security domain. For this, Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol plans to preside over the session. South Korea's top envoy to the UN stressed that malicious cyber activities on key infrastructure and theft of civilian data and cryptocurrency are threats that all countries face. Hwang added that despite the importance of cybersecurity, the topic has not been dealt with as an official UNSC agenda. Seoul also plans to hold public discussions under the theme Child and Armed Conflicts at the request of the UN Secretariat. The ambassador expressed his hope that South Korea's presidency will contribute to the nation's push to expand its diplomatic horizons and emerge as a global pivotal state. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Two B-1B strategic bombers arrived at Andersen Air Force Base in Guam on Thursday as part of a routine bomber task force deployment. The U.S. Pacific Air Forces Command said the bombers were moved from Ellsworth Air Force Base in South Dakota to strengthen readiness and rules-based international order in the Pacific. It spoke about plans to carry out joint exercises with allies and partners in the region. Accordingly, the possibility has been raised of a joint drill with Korea and Japan as took place last December over waters southeast of Jeju Island. The highly anticipated summit between South Korea, Japan, and China will take place on Monday. Amid tensions arising from regional issues, the three sides are likely to try to push for cooperation rather than discuss sensitive issues. This includes the possible revival of discussions on forming a three-way free trade deal. Our top office correspondent Oh Soo-young talked to some experts.
South Korea, Japan and China will focus on cooperation, not contentious security issues, at their long-stalled trilateral summit on Monday. Experts told Arirang News that the meeting comes as the three Northeast Asian neighbors seek to reduce geopolitical tensions in the Indo-Pacific region, along with trade and economic uncertainties. Seoul's top office said Thursday that President Yoon Suk-yeol, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, and Chinese Premier Li Qiang would discuss 6 main areas of cooperation, including people-to-people exchanges and trade, which would be reflected in their joint statement. While the three nations would discuss regional affairs and complex global crises, Seoul made it clear that sensitive security issues would not be the focus of the talks.
The focus would be promotion of a mutual understanding and the pragmatic mutual interest as opposed to, strategic competition and opposition. And this is a very uncertain time for all three countries. The political leadership in Seoul and Tokyo are suffering from, early coming of the lame duck syndrome with very low popularity ratings. And China is very conscious of ongoing strategic competition with the United States, as well as the inauguration of new president in Taiwan. So the mutual interest would be cultivation of pragmatic interest and stability in the region.
While bilateral sticking points and geopolitical tensions will not be resolved easily, experts say they could be managed by focusing on functional issues.
In today's kind of complex world, the very complicated world, interdependence world, we need a sort of a very skillful balance skill to balance different kind of issue, imperative. So we have to deal with this geopolitical challenge, deal with like North Korea issue, Taiwan issue, US pressures. But at the same time, we have to deal with this the issue of the ground, the integration of the economy, and like health issue, climate issue.
Yoon's Deputy National Security Advisor Kim Tae-ho said the three leaders will revive and normalize their trilateral cooperation system. Observers say this could potentially restart discussions to forge a three-way free trade agreement.
So we may see some potential progress towards reopening talks for a trilateral free trade agreement, if only because China has some incentive to go ahead with this, since the problems of the Chinese economy, its slowing growth, its property debt bubble crisis, that gives the Chinese government some incentive to try and possibly get some economic benefits out of a free trade agreement. And also concerns about cost of living and ongoing economic stagnation in both Japan and South Korea also could give some impetus to a free trade agreement negotiations, possibly going ahead. But
the three Northeast Asian countries make up around 23.4% of the world's gross domestic product. Yoon, Kishida and Lee will meet with around 80 business leaders in a welcoming banquet and hold a separate business summit after their trilateral meeting. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The nation's University Council confirmed today an increase in the medical school admissions quota for next year, finalizing the first such expansion in nearly 3 decades. Choi Min-jung has the latest.
The government's plan to raise the medical school admission quota has become a reality. The Korean Council for University Education met on Friday to deliberate over and confirm changes to the 2025 college admissions plan submitted by each university. The final results of the meeting will be announced on May 30th, and universities will announce updated admissions guidelines by the 31st. The government said this marks the first medical quota increase in almost 3 decades.
The 4 main pillars of medical reform aim to expand the number of medical school admissions for the first time in 27 years, to increase the significantly insufficient number of doctors, and revive the collapsing local medical system.
The government's stance is that there will no longer be room for negotiation for change in the future. The government also renewed their call for doctors to return to work.
Please return to work as soon as possible. That's the starting point for resolving the conflict. Due to the prolonged absence, field staff are becoming exhausted, and the anxiety is growing among patients and their families.
Despite the call, national universities have been rebelling against the government's plan by refusing to reflect the quota hike in their school regulation amendments. There have been strong protests from people within the medical community against expanding medical school admissions since the plan was announced on February 20th. More than 90% of resident doctors have left their workplaces, and medical school professors have also submitted resignations or leave of absence requests. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The U.S. authorities have approved ETFs in the cryptocurrency Ethereum to be listed on stock exchanges following a similar decision for Bitcoin ETFs made earlier. An Sung-jin takes a look at what this means for the market.
The creation of Ethereum spot ETFs has now become possible. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission on Thursday approved the listing of Ethereum exchange-traded funds, which was filed by several asset management companies, including BlackRock and Van Eck. NASDAQ, the Chicago Board Options Exchange, and the New York Stock Exchange can now list ETFs tied to the price of Ethereum. Though individual ETF issuers will have to get their S1 filings approved before the products can launch, this signals that Ethereum ETFs can be traded on the stock market. The SEC's decision comes less than 6 months after it approved Bitcoin ETFs. Given that the SEC rejected spot Bitcoin ETFs for more than a decade over market manipulation concerns, it comes as a surprise for some in the cryptocurrency industry who had expected the commission to reject the filings. Reuters noted that this move is expected to pave the way for other products to begin trading later this year. Ethereum is one of the world's largest cryptocurrencies. The price of Ethereum hiked after the announcement, surpassing $3,800. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Shifting gears, the Israeli military is expanding its offensive deeper into Rafah while continuing to shell northern and central Gaza. Amidst ever-increasing tension in the region, the U.S. CIA director is reportedly traveling back to Europe to revive truce talks between Israel and Hamas. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
Israel's military is reportedly moving deeper into the southern Gaza Strip, according to the New York Times and other media outlets on Thursday local time. The Israel Defense Forces claimed that it was operating in the Brazil and Shaboura areas of Rafah, as it seems to be expanding its offensive deeper into the city. Israeli tanks are continuing to operate in 3 eastern suburbs, and residents say they are advancing towards the city's densely populated western district of Ibna as well. Since Wednesday night, airstrikes in multiple regions of central and northern Gaza have also been ongoing, including Zabalia and Deir al-Balah. At least 12 people were killed during the bombing of an aid storage warehouse in central Deir al-Balah, from where the victims were taken to the only hospital that is functioning in Gaza.
A while ago, victims of a massacre arrived at the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital, part of the massacres in this genocide by the occupation army. 12 were killed during this massacre. Most of them were women from Deir al-Balah.
The IDF offensive is expanding despite international pressure and isolation over its war against Hamas, with an International Criminal Court prosecutor requesting arrest warrants for Israel's leader and defense minister, and Norway, Ireland, and Spain announcing recognition of a Palestinian state. To revive talks for a truce between Israel and Hamas, CIA Director Bill Burns is reportedly traveling back to Europe, where he is expected to meet the Qatari Prime Minister and the director of Israel's Mossad. This comes after Israel's War Cabinet instructed its negotiating team on Thursday to resume talks on a ceasefire and hostage swap deal. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
In the U.S., hundreds of Harvard University graduating students walked out of their commencement ceremony on Thursday over a decision to bar the graduation of their peers involved in pro-Palestine protests. Earlier this week, Harvard announced that 13 students whose degrees had been withheld would join the official list of eligible graduates. But on Wednesday, one of the school's 2 governing boards overturned this decision. The board said the school students could appeal and that their degrees would be confirmed if they return to good standing. The students, for their part, claimed they are being punished for putting into practice their freedom of speech. There's been a special event here in the country this week. The Overseas Korean Agency has invited overseas adoptees to share their experiences, providing them with an opportunity to establish their identity as Koreans. Our Choi Soo-young files their story with us.
It took 50 years for Julia, born with the name Park Hae-kyung, to return to her birthplace.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I landed in Korea, I felt like I was coming home. It's almost like I felt it in every cell of my body that I had finally returned to where I belong.
She reunited with her birth family in February this year.
Our books begin at chapter 2. The introduction, the table of contents, the first few chapters are ripped out. So learning the story was valuable. Incredibly valuable, but I think more so just seeing their faces and seeing how much I look like them, and to feel a connection that's unlike I've ever felt.
Heidi, adopted by a U.S. family in 1974 when she was 6 months old, said that all her curiosity about Korea, which she had intentionally kept hidden, came flooding out all at once.
It just came at that pivotal moment for me. And as I was becoming a big fan of BTS, and I was starting to try to learn the language, everything kind of coincided. And it was that switch turned in, and I wanted to know all the stuff. It's this discovery of this other piece of who I am, and to be able to embrace that is very meaningful.
From Tuesday to Friday, the 2024 Overseas Korean Adoptees Gathering was held in Seoul by South Korea's Overseas Korean Agency. 96 people from 15 countries were invited to share their experiences as Korean adoptees. The agency stated that the adoptees should be treated as overseas Koreans, not just as adoptees.
Adoptee is unquestionably an overseas Korean and eligible for support from their homeland. The Overseas Koreans Agency aims to strengthen ties with adoptees worldwide in Korea. The agency will continue to promote gatherings like this conference to strengthen networks among overseas Koreans.
Julia Haegyong said that this gathering was very important in finding out her identity as Korean.
I would like to see us moving forward in this gathering to really establish a network globally with other adopted Korean organizations, while also building a relationship with the Overseas Korean Agency and just feeling more connected to this country, our homeland, you know, the place of our origin.
During the conference, adoptees had the opportunity to experience Korean culture with their families, deepening their understanding of the country.
Adoptees visiting Korea experienced the cultural heritage of their birth country at the Korean Folk Village, a living museum featuring Korea's traditional lifestyles and performances.
The agency noted that adoptees' children are the ones who are actually embracing Korean culture more with their parents. Sophia, who loves K-pop and attended the conference with her mother, who was adopted by a Norwegian family, expressed feeling a genuine, familiar connection to Korean culture.
It was almost like there was a part of me that was empty, but I didn't really know until I kind of stepped off the plane. And I felt like this is another part of me that I have to kind of reconnect with. And she was actually the one pushing me a bit. So it's been like a common journey for us to try and connect more with Korean culture and language.
The Overseas Korean Agency will help these adoptees not only in finding their birth family, but also in embracing their identity as Overseas Koreans and passing down this heritage to future generations. Cha Hyung, Arirang News.
K-pop girl group NewJeans has dropped their first new album in 10 months. Their double single, How Sweet, released on Friday at 1 p.m. Korea time, comes amid the internal conflict between their label Adore and its parent company HYBE. Adore says it includes 4 songs on which the members worked very hard together on, including the title track How Sweet, the pre-release track Bubblegum, and instrumental versions of them. On the same day, BTS leader RM released his second solo album, Right Place, Wrong Person. His agency Big Hit Music says that this album, containing 11 tracks, including the title Lost, began with his question of what he might have been doing if he had chosen a different career path. Showers have been falling around the southern inland areas since late this afternoon. There might be some thunder and lightning during showers due to unstable atmosphere. And hail is expected in some high mountainous areas in the southern parts of the country. Tomorrow it will be mostly cloudy in the central parts of the country and sometimes cloudy in the southern parts. The heat will gradually ease off in the southern parts of the country. On Sunday, the whole country will be cloudy and rain will gradually begin to fall in the afternoon and expand across the country at night, and this rain will continue until Monday. Tomorrow, Seoul will start off at 18 degrees Celsius. Daytime temperatures will move up to 25 in Seoul and Jeju, Busan and Gyeongju 23 degrees. After the rain stops on Monday, warm and clear weather will come around again for the time being. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.